Worries.
Hello, and welcome to this webinar by Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition. My name is Ravi Srinivasan. I'm one of the board members of Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition. And today we have Brianna Welsh from Reneum with us. And I'm very, very excited to be getting her thoughts on this whole world of renewable energy and how it ties to crypto and blockchain as well. Quick introduction. I am an advisor with the governance group. I'm working on several different projects through Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition. We actually just recently concluded a series of grants with our partners at Green NFTs, with several very, very interesting startups in the green NFT space that are really trying to make a difference as far as non-fungible tokens. I do encourage you to take a look at several of our other webinars on different topics over the past several months, as well as stay tuned for some upcoming incubators and other activities over the course of this year. But without any further ado, let me introduce Brianna Welsh. Brianna, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay.
Great. So firstly, if you could give everyone a quick introduction about yourself and, more importantly, Reneum and its focus on accelerating the transition to renewable energy.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. I am the co-founder and CEO of Reneum. We were born out of the belief that individuals and companies and governments are looking for direct climate action. They're looking for activism in a way that actually moves the needle rather than the greenwashing virtue signaling that I think a lot of people are feeling a little bit concerned about. So Reneum ultimately is a marketplace to accelerate climate solutions. We connect impact-focused companies, individual activists, governments, as I mentioned, with causes that really make a difference. So we vet high-impact climate causes, anything from plastic recovery, ocean cleanup, renewable energy. We have a pretty large gamut. And we help them to attract funding via our marketplace and our bespoke blockchain-based tokens. So beginning with a launch actually coming up on World Environment Day on June 5th, our marketplace is activating the climate lever. So we believe that, one of the most important levers to pull for climate change right now is renewable energy. It is the energy transition. And so we partner with renewable producers around the world, issuing them tokens in exchange for clean energy generated in terms of megawatt hours. And they can sell those, they monetize them, and that acts as subsidies for their new development and existing development. Buyers can then purchase them. Buyers would be anybody from an individual to a company with an ESG target. They purchase them to demonstrate their impact and receive a verified green certificate in the form of an NFT. It's a polar bear designed NFT called the Ice Bear. And so ownership of that Ice Bear provides entry into a climate focused member community where we have climate conversations, we have, webinars and thought leadership like we are having today. And then also new initiatives and activations can be sponsored or voted on and invested in directly in the ecosystem. And so it's a DAO technically, so governance is distributed to the community. And the idea is really to democratize access to this new type of ecosystem for ecosystems, we call it. So it's aiming to be the first sort of socially identifiable, verified green label, certified environmentally impactful, which is obviously really important, that encourages action in a positive and sort of aspirational way rather than punishing people, in a sense, for their contributions. Yes. So it's built around green values at the end of the day.
No, that's so interesting. There's so many different questions that came to my mind as I heard you talk about this. In terms of the type of companies that you're bringing this marketplace together for and trying to attract, I'd love to get a sense of maybe some example companies, and I want to dive into a little bit some of the companies that Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition is involved with as well. But I'd love to get a sense of some of the type of companies, some of the challenges also you've had in terms of ensuring that these companies are the right fit for what you're doing, given that there are so many folks who are as passionate as you are about this space and are building interesting solutions.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the whole measurement and verification challenge exists for all of ESG in general, regardless of whether it's on the blockchain. So I can touch on that maybe in the second response. But the first part would be, regarding our own ecosystem and the projects that we vet and that we bring on board. As I mentioned, we're starting the platform with renewable energy because it's, as I said, it's the most important climate lever, but also it's a low hanging fruit because it's easy to monitor renewable energy. Right. Most of these projects are government owned or related to government utilities or entities, and therefore they have a lot of publicly available data. So tampering, hacking, fraudulent, misappropriation of data is very difficult for renewable energy, which is direct, contradiction to carbon, for example, where the measurement and quantification is actually highly complex. And that's why you end up getting a lot of these kind of, quality disparities between environmental impact of carbon credits. In the renewable energy market, it's much easier. So that's why we started with renewables, because we really wanted to professionalize, systematize, automate that vetting process. So that's a big one. So the renewable energy projects around the world are mostly in emerging markets. We don't exclude other countries, but we prioritize markets where there's no government subsidies or where renewable penetration is low. Basically, markets that have been slower to evolve into the energy transition.
Great. So I think, as you know, Brianna, Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition's programs over the past few years have included really understanding and promoting the use of blockchain to address several of the UN SDGs, including affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities, climate, sustainable cities and communities, climate action. In fact, at our Earth Day 2020 event, our specific focus was on mitigating our carbon footprint, on designing sustainable cities, and on abating pollution of plastics. And some of the winners back then, I had the opportunity to be involved as a mentor and work closely with some of these companies. It was quite interesting. There was CO2 Ken, which had an interesting focus on tokenizing carbon offsets. Mm-hmm. Treeger, an open protocol connecting funders to rural tree planters. And so there's so many interesting startups. And of course, I think you're already familiar with Nori, which actually was incubated from one of our programs a few years earlier. So I think startups like this are continuing to push the envelope and really contribute to accelerating this transition in an efficient and equitable manner. And I'd love to get your thoughts on some of these companies you're seeing, diving a little bit deep into maybe some examples and kind of your opinion as to what direction we're all heading in.
Ooh, that's a lot of questions in one.
I know. I'm packing it up for you.
So just to give you a sense of the scale of the market right now in what I'll call crypto climate. Yes. Crypto carbon is like a sub vertical of crypto climate, but crypto climate, in the last 12 months, we have probably seen the market thousandfold in terms of the type of initiatives that we're seeing, the quantity and quality. 1 year ago, we had about 3 competitors, and I think we have something like 25 today. So, wow. So I mean, like fairly close to direct competitors. So that's awesome, because obviously there's momentum behind the market. People are being attracted to, making money while doing good, and vice versa. And I think that's awesome. So, I mean, high level, I love the movement. I'm super behind it. I endorse all these projects, and I think that, we're trying to make an impact in the right way. I think Nori is a great company. I know a little bit about how they operate, but I think one of the challenges companies like them have is, going back to your previous question, the quantification and the measurement of carbon is really complicated. And so the winners of this crypto carbon movement, and Nori is a carbon offset platform, are going to be the ones that can nail that quantification and that integrity of the underlying asset, the asset being the removal of carbon from the atmosphere. So, at the end of the day, if you're taking a third-party verified instrument that's been done in the real world, in the paper market, and you're bringing that on chain and you're tokenizing it, effectively, you're beholden to the same risks that the underlying paper asset has. It's not unlike, the mortgage-backed security market back in 2008,
Yes,
where
yes.
so some mortgages may or may not have been very, really strong. And so what I think we have to be really cautious about as we evolve into this movement is to make sure that somebody has ownership over the integrity of the projects that are the underlying projects being vetted and being brought on chain. And I think Nori is actually one of the better ones, from what I understand. I'd love to speak to them if it's worth connecting.
Yes.
But there are definitely some real risks, I think, that I observe in this whole crypto climate market, which is sort of a parallel space to what you've seen in the last 2 decades of the kind of fund managers turning into ESG funds. The reality of that was that I think we've got something like 10% of ESG funds actually are ESG. And the rest of them just have a nice ESG label. And so, now that there are kind of, in the US at least, there are SEC disclosure requirements for ESG monitoring, I think we're going to see a really big movement in the traditional ecosystem, traditional business. And I hope that we're going to see something similar result in the blockchain and the Web3 space. That will be some kind of framework that is unified, that's a consistent regulation that helps people who buy the tokens, who participate in the economy, to really look under the hood and understand what they're buying, and to make sure that there is an environmental impact. At the end of the day, it's great to make money in an ecosystem like crypto, where, if you believe that is your goal and that is your only goal, that's okay. But if your goal is to make money and do good, and what you're doing isn't actually doing good, well, then it doesn't really make any sense. So that's sort of where I see, a couple of challenges, but they're not unresolvable. I mean, we can definitely, with the right heads together, and there's a lot of smart people around the table who are talking about these initiatives. So I think that we have some positive momentum. Some to call out in particular that I'm enthusiastic about is Jack Dorsey's Bitcoin Clean Energy Initiative. He raised a fund recently to help Bitcoin go green. As I'm sure many of your listeners are aware, there's a controversy around the proof of work, the nature of the energy that's being consumed for the proof of work mining. And so this initiative that Jack has founded is really to help any climate solution that focuses on the greening of Bitcoin, basically. Plastic Bank is another one, not in the kind of environmental space necessarily, or the carbon renewable space, but in the broader ocean and plastic cleanup. They're doing some really cool work, incentivizing via their own kind of economy, plastic recovery and recycling. And they're actually reselling recycled plastic to corporate companies, to P&G companies. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities in the space, and a lot of interesting projects. I mean, I could speak about this for a while.
No, that would be very interesting. In fact, when you were talking about Plastic Bank, there's one firm that we're mentoring right now that I think they would love to get that introduction. So they're actually trying to build projects like this in Kenya actually right now, and they're expanding from there, along with regenerative agriculture and various other spaces. There's so many interrelated spaces here. So I thought it might be interesting to get your thoughts. As you talked about kind of crypto climate type projects. So before we dive into that, I wanted to get your sense of just how the world of blockchain has evolved from the hype years back in 2010 when Bitcoin was initially started, 2017, which was the beginning of the hype years, and today, how you see blockchain, how can it help accelerate this transition to renewable energy? How can it help make the environment more efficient and equitable for us to be able to get to these goals that we absolutely need to get to?
Oh, there are so many ways, which is awesome. So I'm really excited about this, the opportunities and the potential. In terms of the energy transition specifically, one of the biggest ways that blockchains can support the energy transition is to make sure that the blockchain is green, I would say. I think that's probably the most important thing that blockchain has to start with, right? The next most important thing is the layers, the applications like Reneum on top of the blockchain that help the rest of the world prior to blockchain go green, right? So there's the two things. And I think they can happen in parallel, but they may happen in sequence as well. So the former is really what I mentioned before with Jack Dorsey's initiative and a few other companies that we're working with, helping Bitcoin miners to buy green energy, to transition into green energy. It's because they're the ones realistically whose energy consumption is potentially most concerning.
Yes.
And as Bitcoin becomes more widely adopted, there will be, there is a material energetic or energy footprint that's being consumed. So Bitcoin's super interesting as what you call a load, a base load, a buyer of energy, in the way that it is portable and it can be stopped and started at any point in time. So it allows its miners to co-locate next to facilities that no one else wants to go and consume energy from. They call them stranded assets, kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yes.
So Bitcoin has all these really unique profiles that allows it to become a really strong resource in the energy transition, and actually to accelerate energy transition because it allows renewable energy to become profitable in a way that it otherwise wouldn't have been, helping to basically create a new revenue stream for renewable energy developers when they are building in locations that are not close to, kind of commercial or industrial hubs.
Yes.
And also to basically pay for what otherwise would have been curtailed energy from the grid. Curtailed energy is basically energy that's just disappeared because there's not enough space in the grid. Think of like a traffic jam in order to get the energy onto the grid to be consumed by its buyers at the end of the day. And so Bitcoin can be that buyer. They're really unique. So that there's a lot of opportunity in the Bitcoin energy movement to really accelerate energy transition. I think the rest of crypto, especially once Ethereum transitions to proof of stake, which I understand is happening, imminently,
Yes.
frankly, is sort of immaterial. And so I'm not really that concerned about the rest of the blockchain. And I don't think we're going to see any more proof of work protocols develop. Realistically, everything is kind of moving in the right direction. So I would say on that side, my conversations that I'm having, and I'm having this conversation every day with a lot of the leaders in the blockchain space, whether it's corporate companies or protocols or whomever, legislators even, everyone's aware of this conversation and it's being had regularly and solutions are on the way. So I'm not really concerned about it, to be honest. The other conversation is what layers, what applications can we build on the blockchain to accelerate the energy transition or to accelerate climate solutions?
Okay. Yeah.
To more traditional companies, the non-Web3, I suppose. So, I mean, I can go into a lot of details on that if you'd like, or you can let me know.
No, I think it would be interesting actually to get a better sense of your thoughts around that. But actually, I wanted to understand a little bit more about Reneum as well. And you and I've talked a little bit about that separately, but just for the benefit of everyone who's joining us today and will be watching this, how do you see Reneum evolving over the next few years? And you talked about the number of competitors now literally directly doing what you're doing in renewable energy, which is, I'm sure, very, very interesting. How do you see Renew then differentiating itself, and how do you see the whole space evolving as numerous other players come in?
Yeah, I mean, I think the market's growing. So, much like, what you see in traditional venture technology, I just think that the whole market is getting bigger. And so there's more opportunity for everyone to participate. I think it's sort of a rising tide lifts all boats scenario. That's my view. Because of this new access for individuals and companies using blockchain to climate initiatives like ourselves that they didn't really have access to before or visibility on, it just opens up all these new doors for new participants, new stakeholders, new angles. So I think it's good at the end of the day. Some of the competitors I mentioned are not really direct competitors. A lot of them are in the carbon space, and the
Yes.
carbon space is, a parallel industry to what we do, but it's not a direct competitor. But in terms of the evolution of the broader, I'll say, environmental markets on the blockchain, and outside the blockchain, even we're looking at probably a tripling of the markets in this year alone. I've read accounts of up to from 300 million currently kind of annually to up to 100 billion. I mean, that's a pretty significant growth vector over the next decade. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of money, there's a lot of resources. It's just a matter of how do we connect everybody to each other. And I think that's what crypto is uniquely capable of doing is one, it's a community driven ecosystem. And so
Yes.
individuals have access for the first time that in markets that traditionally were kind of handcuffed by companies or by governments. And yeah, I just think as long as we manage our security, trust, credibility, measurement, verification, these sort of kind of, you know, issues that exist in all markets, not unique to crypto nor to environments, by the way. It's everything. That as long as we manage that, I think the markets they're gonna explode. They're gonna continue to grow. So I'm really excited about it. Reneum itself is focusing on being kind of like the Amazon.com of climate initiatives. I can explain that for you, but what I mean is Amazon started with books and then became the everything store. And so we're starting with renewable energy and we'll become the climate store. So that's sort of our idea.
Well,
So
to take that metaphor further, I mean, Amazon is also now kind of a platform for other sellers as well. So did you see kind of a whole channel ecosystem as well?
Yeah,
Folks.
that's very much in our roadmap, actually. So one of the big challenges with carbon and renewable energy in general is that they're all traded in over-the-counter private markets using multiple intermediaries and lots of brokers and highly uninteroperable. And generally, there's a lot of opportunity to arbitrage within these ecosystems because they don't speak to each other. And so price manipulation at the expense usually of the underlying renewable energy project or climate initiative.
Okay.
And so what we're doing is we're creating a completely public ledger, a public transaction history database on our marketplace, which anyone can access. You don't need an account or anything to see it. Okay. It has all the company transaction names. So it's quite detailed. And ideally, and we're talking to some other partners in the space or peers in the space right now, ideally, we will insource all of the other registries' transaction data into our platform so that basically to avoid the risk of double counting or double spending or kind of any kind of, I think arbitrage ideas. So that will help hugely with trust and credibility and price transparency. And I think that that will set a standard, hopefully a new standard for the space. So yeah, we would love to be kind of the purveyor of truth in these markets.
Great. Well, I'm going to be very excited to continue to follow Reneum and see how the market, as you said, as it continues to grow, just watch that with excitement and participate in that and see other companies and all of us really hopefully make a difference in a positive way and be able to participate as this whole space grows and as more people get involved. I know there's so many topics and so many directions we want to go in, but I'm sure people will want to reach out to you directly. I really do appreciate your time today for this relatively short webinar, and I wanted to thank you for taking time to speak with me and for really becoming part of this Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition community.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure. And I'm open to Telegram messages. I'm at Brianna Welsh on Telegram or on Twitter, also at Brianna Welsh. So I'm available. Just DM me if you'd like to chat.
Great. So we'll put that in the subtitles here in the video. And just as a quick reminder to everyone, Blockchain for Social Impact Coalition is a New York-based 501c6 not-for-profit organization that incubates, develops, and collaborates on blockchain products and solutions that can address social and environmental challenges, like I mentioned earlier, across several of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So we're really aiming to inspire, federate, and create these bridges between NGOs and government agencies, foundations, impact investors, philanthropists, technologists, and entrepreneurs like Brianna and her team to really achieve impactful solutions for all of us and make a difference to our world. So again, Brianna, thank you so much for joining, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you. Take care.